Welcome to Joy Unfiltered. I'm Rachel, and this is a podcast about joy. Not the shiny performative kind, not the everything happens for a reason kind. This is joy as a strategy, a way to stay steady when life feels loud, a way to stay human when things are hard, a way to lead, love, and live without burning out or checking out. Some episodes will be just me. Some will be honest conversations with people who have lived their way into a deeper, truer joy. No fixing, no bypassing, just real stories, real tools, and room to breathe. Let's get into it. Welcome back or welcome to Joy Unfiltered. I'm Rachel, your host, and today we have a special guest with us. So I am going to get right into introducing her. We have Jaclyn Orent. She is a cultural catalyst and the architect behind the Cultural Catalyst system, helping leaders create exponential cultural change by applying integrated science and intentional leadership. She is the co-founder and CEO of the Cultural Catalyst Network, a peer community where purpose-driven leaders fuel transformation through powerful relationships and expert facilitation. Her work blends decades of research, including intentional change theory, the science of scaling, power versus force, and EFT, with her own lived transformation to help leaders not just talk about change, but actually become it. So Jaclyn, I am very excited that you are here. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's start. I always have this a little Sound of Music moment when I say this, but let's start at the very beginning. But you don't have to start at the very beginning. But would love for you to give our listening audience today just a bit of a insight into who you are and how you became who you are today.
Yeah, I think I'm going to start off with that last sentence of your introduction is how do you actually be the change? I think that's where we're going to go with this conversation because I actually had to learn that the hard way, the very expensive way, the way filled with more reps than I could ever imagine over the last decade, actually. And the word that I use to describe that is mastery. Mastery is ultimately the repetition of the same skill set over and over. And for me, the reason why I've actually been able to be the change and not just say the change or talk about the change is because the transformation that I literally had to go through leaving corporate America a decade ago and following my own truth.
A couple things, love that. So following your own truth, we'll dig into that a little bit. Also, clearly we were supposed to have this conversation today because I don't know if Gandhi actually said it, but I have that now, be the change emblazoned on my heart. I'll also actually have it on my refrigerator as well as a magnet. So I'm not sure if he's actually the one who said it, but be the change. So living through that. And I think what a powerful role model and example and kind of truth speaker you can be because you have lived through what then you are speaking about. Yeah. So let's just dive right into it. So Cultural Catalyst, tell us what that is. Tell us what that means to you.
Totally. So over the last decade of transformational work that ultimately was sparked by a 36-day water fast.
Okay.
I had to learn how to master myself. What came up from that experience was so beyond what anything I had ever imagined could be of life that it actually made me reorient what I spent my time doing, what was important to me. And ultimately, what I realized was that I was here to be of service in some way, in a way that was in alignment with my purpose. And it wasn't who I had been. And it also wasn't who my parents told me to be. And so I took time off and I started exploring myself. And there was a huge amount of healing that was needed to be able to have clarity as to what it is I'm here to be of service with, partially because there was an immense amount of becoming that was required of me to be able to be here and actually make a positive impact on this planet, not just through what I say or do, but actually through who I am.
Absolutely. So, couple of questions about that. So the 36-hour, 36 day water fast, how does how does one or how did you decide that that was a journey that you were going to go on? I've done like a 3 day water fast,
Yeah.
but 36 days,
So
that's a big decision to make.
it's an ordeal. And quite frankly, there's a part of me that's like, how did that even happen? Like, why did I even do that? And then there's another part of me that knows, I think there was a part of me that was desiring self-mastery in this lifetime, but I wasn't conscious of it.
Okay. So, and
So
that
there
led
was,
you to that
yeah,
space.
there was a calling that was underneath. There was a pull that pulled me in the direction of finding that work, doing that work, going to that level of extreme. Like I didn't even know that I had that in my in my capabilities to be able to be so one pointed focused on an outcome that I would go through absolutely anything. Like I didn't know that was a part of me until that. And now I've actually gotten to forge that skill, right? And to be able to use that skill intentionally in the service of higher meaning and higher purpose. But there was an immense amount of self-actualization that was necessary to actually become the leader that actually creates change just through me being here.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you go through that? I'm just a little bit curious about the actual water fast.
Of course.
Did you have a coach or did you have a leader, a guide that helped
Yeah,
you
I
through
had
that,
a
or
number
was
of
it
leaders at that time. So I was working with a doctor and a nutritionist at the same time, one of which was for it and one of which wasn't for it, actually. So it was definitely my own autonomous decision, to say the least. But I did have people watching me, but I was actually doing it out of my own home at the time. I didn't go anywhere, and I would do that differently moving forwards.
that was going to be my question because
Yeah.
that must have added another layer of complexity. Although I wonder if also then another layer of learning or awareness that came from that, because I would assume I've again only done a 3 day one, but I can assume that if you go somewhere, much like if you go somewhere for a transformation and then come back to your
Totally.
quote unquote real life, that's one thing, but you did it in your real life.
Yeah. It's part of the reason why my life became all of everything transformational, honestly, I think, because there wasn't being a container that was held for me other than the one I was created for myself. And so after I brought food back into the picture, which one of the reasons I took food out was because I was realizing my emotional connection to food was actually preventing me from healing my body. All of that stuff came back after the fast and actually more intensely than it was beforehand. And so that led to extreme behavior and ultimately actually asking for help. Because I didn't have the skill set at the time to be able to address what I had experienced, let alone integrate it and accept it and be able to be in equilibrium during it. I didn't have that skill set. And so that calling has basically led me to developing a skill set that makes me very transformative. I can turn one thing into another. You could call it alchemy, in terms of human beings and most particularly leaders who are what I call systemic critical leverage positions. So working with them creates an exponential amount of change throughout the entire fractal, which can move from the individual to the dyad, to the team, to the organization, to the community, all the way up to the country and up to the global processes is ultimately what I am using my work for at the moment. So it actually turned into a blessing, and it's very clearly my dharmic path. There's absolutely no one out there doing anything remotely close to what I'm doing. And part of the reason we founded Cultural Catalyst was to be able to stand out from the crowd for people who are like, yeah, I am one of those. And in intentional change theory, that's actually called a social identity group. And a social identity group is like the same thing for my dad as the New York Giants, right? He like finds a Giants fan and he's automatically friends with them. And so we're doing the exact same thing with the Cultural Catalyst Network.
I love it. So talk a little bit more about one, who you are finding to, or who finds you. Like, what is that person? Are they seeking something? You talked a little bit um, about you should do this and you should do that. Those are
Yeah.
things that you were trying to break free from. Are those Are those your people, or who are the people that are seeking the work that you're doing?
Yeah, it's funny. The way that we've actually found the people who are seeking the work that we're looking for is honestly what reality has shown us at the moment in time. And it's still growing. We're in our early stages right now and accepting founding members. So there's a part of me that wants to remain absolutely open-minded as to what it is that reality wants to show me for who it is that we are here to serve. And in the meantime, what it has currently shown us is uh, uh, an interesting point in a leader's life where they've achieved what they've set out to achieve, and there's a part of them that isn't being challenged anymore. And they're kind of bored and they're coasting and things are easy. Like they've earned it, right? So there's this like conflict between I earned this, and then there's also the sense of like, if I'm not growing, then I'm dying.
Right.
And so there's the seeking that starts. Sometimes the seeking usually starts externally, but oftentimes the people we work with already are seeking internally, which is where seeking is to be found. What you're
Yes.
looking for is inside, basically. However, what we've actually found is that these women who've achieved what they've set out to achieve, one of the interesting things that I've learned in studying intentional change theory is that for change to actually be sustained and desired, you need to be around people who have similar vision, similar levels of competence so they can actually have compassion for you, and similar amounts of energy so that they can activate each other. And with these women who've already achieved what they set out to achieve, they're surrounded by mentees, like literally employees, contractors, or people who've gotten them where they are. And so oftentimes when it comes to, visioning into the new as to what could be possible for them next is that their current relationships are actually designed to keep them where they are.
Yes, absolutely. It's interesting. I was just having a conversation. It wasn't with a woman, but with a man who was saying, what was the phrase that he used? He's like, I am in this role, but there's just enough. Discourse was not the word that he used, but there's just enough that keeps me interested, because you're right. If a lot of women, and a lot of women who are listening to the podcast as well, have reached what society, or even what they might have said is my pinnacle, and once you get there, then now what?
Yeah.
Right? They're in their 50s, they're not done, but now what? So I
Yeah.
love that you have created, seems like some sort of a container, or a network, or somewhere. So are they, this network that you've created through the Cultural Catalyst, is that part, are they talking to each other? Do they talk to you?
Yeah.
Like what are they're seeking? And then
Yeah.
they come to find you.
Yeah.
Then
Totally.
what happens?
Well, first of all, just like my fast was a call, I would say the work that we're doing in the Cultural Catalyst Network is also a call. So for women who are listening to this and they're like, I'm a cultural catalyst, and no one's ever said that to me before. First of all, we have a place for you. This place was particularly created for people who identify as that. And the second thing is, what got you here won't necessarily get you where you're going. And so the first step of the cultural catalyst process, besides actually like, I am a cultural catalyst, that is step one. Okay. Step two is actually visioning as a cultural catalyst and actually looking at what is the cultural contribution you're here to make. What is the legacy that you're here to leave behind? And actually addressing your mortality now, because that actually gives us the ability to be able to live with more purpose, more meaning, and actually create a new vision for ourselves that can actually be the foundation for who it is we are next, how we spend our time next, with whom, and so on and so forth. So that's the first step of the cultural catalyst system. And then the second step is actually we set a new frame. So in Hardy's scaling science, one of the things that we actually do is we set a frame so high that we think it's impossible. Okay, this could be called a moonshot. This could be called a big, hairy, audacious goal. But mostly, one of the challenges that people have with goal setting is that they're setting goals based off of who they've been, which
Mm,
makes it incremental growth. And one of the things that makes a scaling goal, and what I mean by a scaling goal is it's 10x or more, okay? And 10x can be sometimes something personal, right? That could totally 10x your life. And it could be revenue, it could be number of people that you've impacted, it could be a personal relationship that would help you 10x your impact, right? There's a lot of things that could help you 10x your life, really. And partially because people aren't setting their frames high enough. They're not setting goals that are asking them to redefine who they are.
right. And so are you, so when, okay, so they vision it, they set this, they need to set a new frame. And are you asking them to, do they have to know who they need to become in order to set that new frame, or is that part of the process?
That's part of the process. And part of the things that makes me different than Hardy is that the masculine wants to set a frame based off of a pre-existing reality. And part of it is you can still set an impossible frame, one that you think that it's going to make you stretch you and make you come up with new capabilities and new skills, right? That is one way to do it. But the masculine can set a goal and they can push towards it. That's not how the feminine works. The feminine works based off of desire. So we actually have to, help the woman let go of why they're doing what they're doing right now and purify it to actually create a gateway for them to choose something different. And
Right.
from there, we set a frame. That way, it's inherently pulling them and not requiring them to push, which makes burnout happen.
That you are speaking exactly this joy-led leadership language. We're just coming at it. I mean, you're doing much different things than what I'm doing here, but I love even the language that you're using. It's really interesting. I was talking a couple weeks ago with someone about using the word, I'm like, really what I'm trying to define, it's feminine energy, but we're just using different words because sometimes that feminine
Yeah.
word gets a negative, or it's triggering, or it's a negative context. And
Yes.
then it happened to me because just yesterday somebody said, oh, the way in which you're describing leadership is very feminine. And my first reaction, I had this visceral body reaction to no, but then I was like, yes, but not in the way that you're saying it. It's not
Yeah,
soft, but
totally.
it is using all of the powers of
Yeah,
collaboration. And I'm not hustling, I'm not doing these things.
totally.
I am saying that I want to be regulated. I want my emotional state to be regulated so I have the capacity to make good decisions.
Yes.
Yeah, if that's what you're talking about, that's what I'm saying. You can call it whatever you want,
100%.
that, right?
Yeah.
So
And we can actually reframe feminine leadership and, its projections of femininity being weak and dependent and whatever cultural conditioning has taught us about being a woman, and actually look at what the science tells us about what is the difference between power and force.
right. So asking those questions and using that language, I love it. And right. And we don't want force. I mean, what is that going to get us? That's going to get us burnout, right?
And it's also what the research tells us about the science of consciousness and the scale of consciousness, where this is actually measured from 0 to 1,000, where 1,000 being enlightenment and 0 being death, and 200 being the critical threshold of life, is that when we force things, we're actually not giving to life. We're taking from it. And as women, that's not in our nature. We're here to nourish and rejuvenate. And at the same time, we have to do it from a place of reciprocity, from a place of our cup being full, so that it is from a place of power and that it's life-giving and it's not draining to us and society at large.
Yeah. Oh, fascinating. It just, uh, again, for me, it's the realization that I appreciate the fact that you are speaking, I mean, using this language and not shying away from just calling it what it actually is, and then redefining for society
Totally.
that this is what, let's go back
Yeah.
to actually what feminine power is, not how it got bastardized kind of
Yeah.
in
And
the
it's actually,
by
we can go
culture.
down even further because there's a lot of projection on the word that I'm about to share. It's called Eros, Eros. I'm pretty sure it's a goddess in mythology too.
I think
Eros is
so.
actually one's life force, someone's chi. And when we think of feminine leadership, what we're actually talking about is the creative force that makes life itself. Like the woman's ability to actually birth life onto this planet, that is through Eros. That is through the creative flight force of creation itself, right? So when we actually look at what that means in regards to the science of how does change actually happen, how do we scale, it has to come from intrinsic motivation. We have to desire it, which is the exact same thing as what Eros is. It's our willingness, it's our wantingness to do something. And from that is literally from where we create worlds.
So that is then, because one of the things I know that you are passionate about is this whole, how do we create cultural change? And so
Mhm.
is that then kind of leading into how we create that cultural change?
Yeah, it's part of how we create that cultural change because the first step in change science of how does change happen from the individual to the organization to the community, right? Like, how do we create a new culture at a time where it's needed? Everything is crumbling. We're going to need something new, right? And that really stems from our ideal vision for ourselves or a collective shared vision of a new culture, literally. So, what you want is part of your vision for yourself. It is who you want to become. And that inherently pulls you forward in the change process. So, this is part of what's necessary for something called PEA to be activated, which stands for positive emotional attractor. It is literally the state in the body where the body's in rest and digest. And what's most interesting to me is it's in the neurological state where you're open-minded. You're able to collaborate. You're able to creative think. And Einstein says we're not going to be able to, solve our problems from the same level of consciousness that created them. So that means whatever vision that we are shooting for in our lives, whatever it is drawing us forward, it needs to light us up. It literally needs to turn us on like a light switch because that actually creates the PEA and the fuel, like going to a gas station to actually get where we want to go.
PEA. I wrote that down. And for those of you in your cars who you can't take notes right now, or you shouldn't be taking notes if you're driving, PEA, positive emotional attractor.
Yeah.
Love that. That is something, yes, love it. I'm going to use it. Um, and now I was loving that. And sorry, my cat is joining us
Okay.
today too.
There's
Those
something
of
I
you
want to
who,
add to that right there,
yeah,
actually.
yeah.
So the reason why PEA is so important in our change efforts and actually to make a change like process actually happen is because systems inherently protect themselves. So Machiavelli back in 1515 literally said the system is designed to protect itself. The biggest challenge are the people are going to be the ones who are trying to create a new system. And as cultural catalysts, that's what we're doing. And because we already know the inherent challenges in overcoming a system that's designed to prevent itself, we have to make sure that our collective shared vision of catalyzing culture is exciting. It's got to be invigorating. It's got to be full of possibilities and potentials that we're seeking to actualize. And I think that's so true for women as in particular. It's like I think the feminine has a knowing for how to bring everything back into harmony right now. And so to be able to do that, there has to be something that's pulling you forward to be able to help you get where you want to go, and not just individually but collectively. Like the reason why we made a network was because we're not able to do this alone. It's like physiologically and actually neurologically impossible. So what I like to say is your peers are the non-negotiable infrastructure that actually helps you get where you're trying to go, which in our case is create a new culture, or literally will prevent you from going where you're trying to go, which, oftentimes as leaders and executives and entrepreneurs, when we're doing something new, our family freaks out, right? They're like, don't see the vision of where you're going. And the same thing is true for creating a new culture. It's going to be challenging. And at the same time, we can do that when we have each other.
And I like that you say that as well. I think that the conversations that I've been having with women lately, or with anybody lately, are about the need, the remembering that we need each other, that we need community, that we need the collective to, one, just to survive, but also then, like you were saying, to create change as well.
Yeah.
So how are you helping then both on the individual in terms of like the coaching, and then to the collective? Like, what are you doing, you and your co-founders doing to move this forward?
Yeah, so first of all, one of the things we did was we had to create a structure that was actually repeatable, so that leaders can actually come together within the social identity group of cultural catalysts and actually vision together, to have compassion for the challenges and to actually activate each other to be able to sustain the change efforts. So part of what we're doing actually with the Cultural Catalyst Network is actually bringing together very small groups of leaders who identify as cultural catalysts, and are currently operating siloed. One of the things that I had a conversation with a woman last week, I'm actually going to Scottsdale for a cultural catalyst initiation for, is that right now the people who are actually capable of creating a new culture right now are completely siloed and they're not working together. And so when you look on a change science level, when we look at what the whole fractal is, we have the individual, the dyad, right? That's the couple, whichever form that takes, the team, the organization, the community, the country, and then the global processes. That's the entire system right there, okay? Right now, the leaders are siloed at the organizational level right now, and then there's
Mhm.
no communication happening between them and other people in other silos so that we can actually create a community effort of doing something different. Like and that's the overall greatest society. And what I see right now is that that's actually a huge hindrance in actually creating a new culture, is because we're not communicating with each other. We don't even know that each other exists, who are actually the right people that could help us scale the impact to be able to help change the world in some way. And not only is that, like, as I said, the non-negotiable infrastructure for sustained change to actually happen, but it's also the recipe that's needed for the collective new vision for what's moving forward, right? We move from having an individual vision to a collective shared vision. And that collective shared vision is actually what creates movements. It's what creates change. And as long as everybody's siloed and doing their own work in their own areas right now, we're not going to be able to create the new culture. And so that's why we're bringing everybody together.
I love that. And as you talk about this new vision, I mean, what do you see, or where's this going? What's your vision for
Yeah,
the future? Or is that something
totally.
that's created by the collective?
Well, there is an aspect of, I have my ideal vision for the future, right? But my vision is going to be expanded by the people in the cohorts. And their vision is going to be expanded by being in the cohorts. But I can share with you what mine is right now, which, like, when one of my mentors is Ray Dalio, the founder of Bridgewater Associates and the macro investor who actually studies the rise and fall of empires and what are the critical things that happen. There's actually certain things that happen consistently over like thousands of years. And we're actually in one of those times right now. We're in transition from the United States being a world power to yep, I know your body has a response to that, to the
Yeah.
United States not being a world power anymore. And the main indicator that Ray looks for is that our currency won't be the Federal Reserve currency anymore. That's like one of the indicators our currencies is going to go through transition. And so what that actually looks like is that we're going to go through a period of the next 20 years about immense amounts of change and transition. Okay. And then we actually start moving back into a prosperity cycle. And if I did the timeline correctly, that's when I'm going to be in my 80s. So it means I will die or keep living through a period of actually seeing the outcome of actual prosperity in our system while I'm alive. But I also get to help actually make that occur. So it's both got its challenges and its mastery ahead of us. But at the same time, the reward is leaving the planet and the people better off than when I found it.
Fascinating. Fascinating. So if I'm listening, because one of the things that you said, people are raising their hands and saying, yes, I'm a cultural catalyst. Like I am. What if
Yeah.
I'm listening and I'm like, I don't I don't think I am. I
Well,
believe in what you're saying. I don't think I'm a cultural catalyst. What's my role, or what do I do?
yeah. Well, first of all, I actually purposely designed it for this. So it's meant to filter for the people who are yeses, and it's meant to filter out the people that are nos. And one of the things that change science actually teaches us is something called the ought self. And the ought self is who we should be. And I know there's a part of people who are probably listening to this being like, she feels really good, like I'm really inspired, and part of that doesn't resonate, and that's okay. It is literally designed for the people who are yeses and meant to repel the people that are nos. And part of what we know about the change science is those shoulds and coulds and what ifs that we project onto ourselves, those are ours. Okay, that's our cultural conditioning. That's who we should be. But if being a cultural catalyst isn't part of your ideal self, that's okay. That means it's part of your ought self. Okay. And we don't want people who are trying to ought themselves into being a cultural catalyst. That doesn't sustain the change efforts for them. That actually, prevents the PEA from happening in our groups. And that actually prevents the people who are listening to this to actually finding the social identity group that has a shared vision that they believe in.
So it's okay that maybe I'm not like raising my hand,
Totally.
but I'll just hope that then I'll put my trust in those change catalysts that are doing that, so that good decisions get made. But if
Yeah.
I am raising my hand, you went through a little bit of a framework, but what do I do? I mean, do I like pull over my car right now and I'm like gonna go right on the website and sign up, or what are my steps that I do
Yeah.
with you? And are there things that I can be doing within my own organization or within my own life right now, within my own social circles, to one gather the skill sets that I need to help with this cultural
Yeah.
change?
So first of all, I want to acknowledge that it's totally okay for people who aren't cultural catalysts. I accept that. And that is great that they know that and they're accepted here if they are not. And the people who are cultural catalysts, that is accepted here too, as well. And so one of the things that really gets people to move forward on what it is that I'm talking about and the action that I'm calling forth in people who are listening to this is it's a call. Okay. I want to be very clear that it might be beyond something that it makes sense, but there's a part of you that knows that it's the next step. And so we actually have a cultural catalyst initiation for people who are like, I want to go in and actually experience a half day to a full day with Tracy and I, my co-founder. And you can actually go sign up for that at culturalcontribution.com. And for those of you who are like, hold on a second, I'm not ready to fully, go fully into the masterclass. That's okay. I have a 15-page synthesis written that literally reviews the cultural catalyst system, the perceived integration based off this amount of implementation, and the invitation to join us in the cultural catalyst masterclass, just if that's something that they want. So that's available to them. And they can find that on my website, which is culturalcatalysts.net.
Cultural catalyst. And just so you know, I will be putting all this in the show notes. Okay, so there's an initiation, but again, if I and I read, and I'm not ready for that. I'm gonna read through your 15-page synthesis. But are there things that I can again start to do in my own life that will help to strengthen the cultural change that is happening, or
Yeah,
my part in
so
the cultural change?
right now, where we are with building the Cultural Catalyst Network is we are modeling Elon Musk's and his ability to build out Tesla. And that goes as follows, which is he built out the highest level Tesla first, the medium level Tesla, and then the lower level Tesla right now. And so the Cultural Catalyst Network is specifically for the higher level Tesla at the moment. And we'll be reinvesting that to be able to build out for the mid-level Tesla and the lower level Tesla. However, we have partnered with a master EFT practitioner and trainer of over 30 years. Her name is Sonia Sophia, and she's created something called the World Tapping Circle that is actually on-demand EFT, which stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, also known as tapping. And for people who don't know what that is, it is literally a mind, body, and spirit technique that uses cognitive behavioral therapy and actually tapping on the body where the Chinese say the energetic meridians are, and also using words such as forgiveness and acceptance and love and mercy in regards to what it is that we are experiencing. And what this actually does, it's been clinically researched actually to help people recover from PTSD, but it actually helps you work through and expand your capacity to be able to see reality in a new way. And that is part of the cultural catalyst system, is to be able to expand your leadership capacity through EFT. Because when it comes to doing something new, one of the greatest challenges we have as humans is our nervous system and our brain and mind's ability to keep us safe.
Mm-hmm.
So when we know we need to be doing something different, but we might not be able to actually change our behavior, that's because we actually have to address the neural network that's actually created the pattern that it is that we are participating in. And so we've partnered with Sonia, who already has an EFT library of over 300 videos, everything from 5 minutes to 90 minutes, that people can actually find on our website at culturalcatalyst.net.
Oh, that is great. And we have talked about, for those of you who are listening that have listened to other podcasts, we have talked about EFT before. I've said because I'm into all of the energy work, but I was still amazed at how quickly my state changed, or how quickly I was able to regulate my nervous system by using EFT, even though I had heard about it for years and years. I just experienced it last year. So for those of you who are on the fence, go look at it. I love that you have all of those resources from Sonia.
Yep.
I'll make sure that put that in the show notes as well. But it is it's just an amazing protocol to use. So I highly recommend it. So love that it's part. So so anything else? I mean, I love the whole kind of structure and the things that you are trying to do. I think it is fascinating to think about leadership kind of in this way that, and I also appreciate you using the word calling. So those of you who are listening, you either know, or you know, if you have that calling. I knew that I had a calling to talk about joy. I know that you have this calling about being a cultural catalyst. What else do we need to know? What else does that person who is beeping
Yeah.
their horn, raising their hand. What else do they need to know
So,
before kind of we wrap up here? So,
yeah. I'm a student of Richard Rudd of the Gene Keys. And the Gene Keys is a system that helps you unlock your purpose hidden within your genetics. I've been studying it for 7+ years now, and I'm a living embodiment of the chart. And one of the keys that I have in my chart is bliss. That is also that's the higher expression of vitality, which is the gift. And then the shadow of it, which is the state of contraction, is dissatisfaction. This is directly paired with another key, which is basically a term that they affect each other, that they have a relationship in which they directly affect each other. So there's causality between the two of them, is the gene key of stress, actually, and the essence of that being stillness. And so they are actually part of something called the ring of seeking. Okay. The ring of seeking is a term that basically describes, a certain set of those, you could call them codes. Okay. Like different codes of consciousness and how they express. And one of the interesting things about seeking is I've done a lot of seeking myself to be able to come to the clarity that I have and what I'm working on. It required me to find out who I was and what I was here for. And one of the things that I think I want to remind people of is that is not outside of you.
say that again. So it is not like it is all internal, right? We
Yes.
have this. Right. Yeah.
And there's no, part of the seeking process is looking externally. It is finding the books. It is finding the mentors. It is finding the people that you resonate with or the bodies of work that give you tools that you might not have, but all of them lead you internally. If you are seeking joy externally, you are not going to find it. And the reason I know is because joy happens spontaneously on its own.
It does.
Okay. In the most random circumstances. For me, it's dance. I find joy in dance, ecstatic dance, or 5 rhythms specifically. Or I find joy in movement specifically.
Mhm.
So joy can be found all these different places. And I've been able to actually receive that joy naturally because I've cleared enough of the clouds that I can naturally let the sun shine through. And we all have access to that. If we are thinking that the joy or love that we are looking for is outside of us, we are going to find dissatisfaction and we're going to find stress.
Yes, I 1000% agree with that it is an internal thing. But you also said the words that I use often too is that we all have access to it. We all have access to it. We just have to notice it, allow it, choose it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have tried to get through. I have a little bit of the Gene Key information. I do have that book by Richard Rudd. I have
Yeah.
like read just a tiny bit of it, but that's another thing. If those of you are interested in doing a little bit more of that internal work, that's a it's a
Roadmap.
there's a lot. It's a
Yeah.
lot. It is a lot, and I appreciate the fact that you said that you've studied it for what 6 or 7 years. So
It's
so
a
that
lot of time
yeah
now. Yeah.
yeah so that
Lost track.
it's something that is like something that's super easy, but there are some really powerful things
Yeah.
about understanding your own internalness, I
Yeah.
guess is the
And
word.
the Gene Keys to me is like a roadmap to your awakening. It's your unique hero's journey, and everyone has one different. So, and that's the thing. Like I've in my own journey have followed other mentors, done things the exact way that they showed me to do them, and then I actually found that to not be true for me. And that really just taught me that everyone has their own unique spiritual path of self-actualization. And so when the people who are on this podcast are like asking what's next and then they're seeking for answers, part of that is actually finding out who you are and what you're here for. And that requires a shedding of what you thought to be or who you thought to be or what you're here for to some extent. So that's why there's willingness required. And one of the things that I want to make sure to mention is letting go of the negativity is like the way to expand. That is, true across multiple different spiritual teachings, and is ultimately the vehicle for self-actualization, including in one's career. I'd like to make that direct correlation and how it affects one's productivity. And we also need to learn how to let go of resisting the higher levels of functioning. So sometimes we have actual thresholds in terms of how much good can we experience. and we actually prevent ourselves from feeling more joy, or feeling more love, or feeling more ecstasy, right? We actually get to learn how to catch that and let ourselves sit in that discomfort of not letting ourselves feeling the good and actually starting to let ourselves enjoy it. And once we actually begin to do that, we start getting access to those higher peak states more consistently, whereas joy is just a part of our life.
Agreed. Agreed. And to circle back, just to give people a little bit as well, just about the gene keys, I like, the piece that I like about it is it gives me language to know, it gives me language, and it gives me a little bit of grace as well. As you said, you talked even at the beginning about the shoulds or the oughts or things like, for me, studying some of this and really understanding the internal, what is happening, and having the language, it has been freeing
Yeah.
to experience more breadth and depth of emotion, because I've been able to, at least for me, it's been able to be like, oh, give yourself some grace. It's okay. That's who you are. Like, that's who you are. And it is helpful, at least for me, to have language
Yeah.
around that. So
I often, well, one of the base level skills of mindfulness, which is underneath all of this for me, that's like my base level skill that I've had to obtain in the last decade, was labeling. And part of labeling is actually accepting reality as it is. So as soon as we label an emotion or a state like dissatisfaction or sensitivity or purposelessness, that's one that I find, right? These give us codes to actually identify how it is our consciousness is expressing. And once we actually are able to identify it, it's almost like the diagnostic manual that's used in clinical treatment, right? But the diagnostic model doesn't look at what's right. It just looks at what's wrong. And so what I love about the gene keys is it's not judgmental about what it is that you were doing or how you were expressing or how you were behaving. It's just showing the different wavelengths of what it is that you were expressing. And doing so, it allows for us to bring self-acceptance and a non-judgmental attitude to our evolution.
yeah, absolutely. Giving it the context or the language, I think then allows us to even, it's this is going to sound antithetical, but to give you the language so that you can let go of the language.
Literally,
Right?
yes.
You need the language first. You need the label first so that you can let go of the label.
Yeah,
So
it's true. It's very true. And that's the limitations of AI. Literally, when you look at the scale of consciousness, it stops at objectivity and reason, and love is at 500. So, and how do we access love, right? Again, we have to let go of our negativity so the clouds and the sun naturally shine through. And the same thing is true for, the higher levels of being, which are love and joy and gratitude and inspiration. And, for the people that are listening to this being like, yeah, these are inner states of being. And really, you're probably right. That's what I want, but I'm like seeking all these external things. One of the things that we have to remember with these internal goals is they actually have like quantifiable outcomes. And that's the research that I found in my practice over the last decade, and what I have been integrating into these different sciences is actual quantifiable exponential outcomes when we actually change who we are in terms of our productivity. Like, I have a COO I've been mentoring for quite a while now, and she's in desire right now, which is life-taking, and it's creating hyperactivity. And I was like, that is below my standards for functioning for you. Okay. We get access to happiness and productivity and peak performance without stress and miracles and synchronicities when we come into a place of willingness and actually learn to accept who we are and what we are not and everything in between, and find the unconditional love that really is our birthright. And from there, we create extraordinary outcomes in our businesses. We create extraordinary outcomes in our relationships. We create a new culture that is based off of love and is inclusive. And we actually create a world that actually works for everybody and not just for a select few.
I think that is a really great way to bring it back and to sum that up, because I struggle sometimes, and we talk about this on this podcast a lot, about how these concepts, when you first hear the word, can seem fluffy, but as you're listening and as you have been listening, when you look at the actual words and then live into them, your outcome, it is about your outcomes. I mean, so your
Yeah.
outcomes you will change. You
Yeah.
will change. So the leaders or the entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
as you're listening, if you're just struggling with the outcome stuff, you're missing the beginning point. You have to do the work
Yeah.
right? Of finding love and joy and being there. And then
Yeah.
everything else just flows.
Well, and that's where I actually get to combine Hardy scaling science, right? Because this is the feminine approach. We know this to be true, that everything flows from a place of alignment, from a place of love and gratitude. However, at the same time, it's like, where do we direct that inner work? And so that's where I actually use the scaling science, and where actually Dr. Benjamin Hardy told me not to read any of his other work besides Science of Scaling, because he read my thesis for grad school, a lot of what we're talking about right now. And he read my outcomes that I have obtained. And one of the things that I've realized is that we can actually use the mechanism of surrender, i.e., learning to let go of something with precision, when we know what we want, when we know what the frame of what it is we want to become, with a timeline that makes us take something that's out there and actually be able to change who we are right now. That's how we're actually able to use the non-linear to create exponential outcomes in the linear.
Love it. I love it. So if people want more of you, if people want more of this, you've said it already, but will you just remind people how to find you, and
Yeah,
then
totally.
how to become a cultural catalyst if they are
Yeah.
wanting?
So the way you can find me is through culturalcatalysts.net. And yes, that is plural. It is meant to be a we, not a me. So culturalcatalysts.net is where you'll find my 15-page synopsis, which is called the Cultural Catalyst Synopsis. You'll also have the ability to sign up for the World Tapping Circle and expand your leadership capacity through Sonia Sophia's work on there. And you'll also be able to follow us on social media. So those are the three main things that you can find on our website. But like a website, there's a lot of things on there. So the ability to sign up for the masterclass for those who are wanting to actually step into that next iteration, expand their vision of what's possible, set a new impossible goal and timeline. You'll actually get an invitation to be able to apply to the network after you go through that. So we have a multi-stage application process. First goes, there's an actual literal digital application where we filter things like where you are and what you're doing and what's important for you and what level of leadership are you at right now. And you'll have the ability to potentially get to talk to Tracy, where we go through a round of interviews, and then eventually me. So for the people who make it through that process, they'll actually get an invitation to be a founding member of the Cultural Catalyst Network. And these are for the people who are the pioneers that are like a full body yes to what I'm saying right now, who are ready to build and go out on the new frontier. And, I keep thinking, I'm in Colorado, so I keep thinking about like the man who traveled the West. This wasn't here. Like there were people that went out onto the Front Range and, addressed the unknown and went somewhere new and settled and created a new way of being. And that's what the Cultural Catalyst Network is for right now, for the people who are like, yeah, I'm going to go out on the front, on the front there with you. I want to help you build this, and we're going to do that together.
Oh, I love it. And so if that is you, go to the website, find Jaclyn and all the things that she is doing. But I just really want to thank you for your time today. I appreciate you sharing your gifts with us today. I think that is not the universe works in all of the right ways. So we were brought together, and those of you listening, you were brought here. We're supposed to listen to this
Yeah.
today. So take that for really what that is. And as always, Rachel, I am celebrating you today and every day. So have fun, live well, enjoy.
Mhm.